This chapter is focused on how technology can help operators constantly monitor and audit task completion and compliance with both brand standards and regulations, even when they're not in the restaurant. Bob Gibson and Jeff Pinc of Jolt will talk about the benefits of automation and data to ensure accountability and best practices for avoiding surprises. Welcome, gentlemen. I appreciate your time. Let's jump right into this.
So, Bob, how about telling us a little bit about Jolt, and then we'll get started.
Sure, great. Kelly, thanks for having us. I'm really excited to be here. The product Jolt really brings management tools to restaurateurs. Actually, it's any business operator that has any kind of task management or digital food safety or anything around those lines. And really the goal of the product is to create a tool that creates efficiencies within the restaurant environment and really allows you to get a strong ROI based upon the metrics that we're able to provide for you. And I'm sure we'll be getting into a lot more detail on how we can do it and in general, how, we can help restaurateurs. But that's myself, and I'll let Jeff introduce him.
Yeah, hi, Kelly. Yeah, thanks for the conversation today. So Jeff Pinc, 30-year industry veteran in technology in the restaurant. Not to mention the operations experience in the restaurant space that I have, and in fact, still partnering in 2 restaurants today. So anyways, looking forward to the conversation. I'm a fairly newcomer to Jolt, but an old soul when it comes to the hospitality industry.
That's awesome. So super excited again about the conversation. So I'm going to start with really the simple question, right? And I'm sure you face this when you kind of lead into restaurants. I'm really focused on kind of small, mid-sized restaurants and leading in of saying, I have my paper checklist, right? I go through, I have the routines down. My teams have the clipboards. Why is that not effective? Why would I want to spend money every month? And then I'm sure you kind of, come up against some of that resistance sometimes because there's a lot of tech out there and there's a lot of investment happening in the restaurant. And it's not driving revenue. So how would you guys kind of combat that and give some advice when restaurant managers or restaurant owners, when they come back to you saying those things?
Yeah, it's a great question. And today, if you look at the environment, it's about 2% of spend is on a product like ours. But when you look at it really from an efficiency standpoint and a preventative cost standpoint, I guess the easiest way to describe it is kind of our owner, who was a Baskin-Robbins franchisee. His experience was kind of similar, right? Everything was on paper. He had the red book. People were checking off stuff left and right. And preventative maintenance was supposedly being done. And then on New Year's Eve, when the compressor went out, because nobody actually did the checks, cost them about $10,000 in inventory and about $1,000 in a bill to get somebody out there that night. So when you kind of look at it, past just a traditional ROI, but you look at it from a preventative standpoint, it's a pretty compelling story. The other part that we're really excited about is marrying up the data that we're able to provide with BI as well. Mm-hmm. So if you look at a multi-unit location, mid-market down to multi-unit SMB, I think that you're going to find a pretty strong correlation between lack of following brand standards and lack of performance from a financial standpoint. So a lot of those type of things, I think we talk about regularly with our customers, and really that's the value part that we bring to the table.
What we're finding too, and especially in this new normal or the craziness we're in today, operationally, things are changing, and they're changing for a lot of reasons. You've got to gain the trust of your employees and your customers to eat or work at your establishment. And number 2, you've got to comply with a lot of rules that are just crazy. They're different by state, by city, and by brand. And so just brand standards and operational changes are just, driving employees to just try to understand what they're supposed to do. And so part of what we do is really driving revenue, because these new operational standards that are coming out by brand are really just driving new ways to make money for the brand. And so how do you take the complexity out employee by employee? And that's through great checklists and training content that can be shared across the enterprise to make sure that they're doing the right things to earn that customer's trust, to earn the employee's trust, but to take the complexity of new operational. And then I guess I'd just add that hot, fresh, and delicious does drive new revenue.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you know what? And I think it's interesting because, outside of, you're on mute being one of the biggest phrases of 2020, I think the other one is the new norm, right? And it truly is a new norm and everything's changing. And, there's the status quos or the sacred cows of how people did operations. Nothing exists, right? None of us have a playbook to get through it. But I think what was interesting is I was reading on your website, your 7 pillars for success, and would love for you to kind of walk through those. But I think they're pretty much kind of basic block and tackle within restaurants, right? Clean, serving hot food, fresh food, accurate, friendly service. When you say them out loud, they seem basic, but when you're in a restaurant, which has become even more complex than maybe it was, 6 months ago, how do you measure that? How do you ensure that it's actually happening and trusting that people are not just, again, whether it's on a checklist or whether it's on a tablet or, through technology, that they're not just checking the list. And so would love to have you kind of walk through some of those principles because I think they apply everywhere. And then when you talk about even something like clean and when you go back into kind of measurement, I think I saw a stat in there that 75% of, customers won't visit a restaurant that has bad ratings about cleanliness, right? And so that then does correlate into traffic and revenue. And so maybe we just start with, some of the principles and kind of walk through how actions then can turn into, either profitability or, customer satisfaction.
Before Bob starts, I'll throw in one new buzzword, sanitization, not just cleaned.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I'll give you kind of a real world example too and how it affects revenue. But I would start with kind of, the fundamentals are still the fundamentals. And, you have a sense of a district manager or a regional manager and their ability to kind of run their regions. And you score it multiple ways. And a lot of companies will have kind of a scoreboard that includes maintaining task management and that sort of thing. But it's also a revenue implication, right? So when you look at a region, and having been in the restaurant business myself for 30 years off and on, you look at your region and you look at the revenue that's coming out of it. And it's not always because of foot traffic or you have the bad location that you lose customers. And in a lot of cases, the correlation between lack of sales and cleaning your bathroom is pretty high, right? And this is stuff that I think the brands that have really done a nice job understand and drive into kind of their workflow. So from a practical standpoint, we have a really large customer that their main revenue is burgers and breakfast. That's how they make their money. But their upside capability is really on ice cream and frozen drinks. And as I'm sure, Kelly, those notoriously break, right?
Yeah,
So there's some required maintenance that has to be done on a regular.
And difficult to sanitize.
Very difficult to sanitize. And it's very easy to walk up to those machines, pop it open, close it, put the code in, and not actually clean it, which I think is a common thing we see. So one of the things that we do that's a little unique is we'll put QR codes in different components within the machine. So you physically have to scan it so that we can report that up. From not just the manager, the GM, the DM, but also the VP level, where you can get a dashboard that says, hey, look, of my estate, I've got 80% that's in compliance. I've got 20% that's not. And one of the things I think we find and our customers find is that 20% that's not in compliance also tends to have other issues as well. So that's kind of, just a practical example, but also, the tackling and blocking of business is still the tackling and blocking of business. And the new normal's shifting a little bit on delivery, pickup, and those fundamentals. But underneath it all, it's still take care of the customer, have a clean environment, and make sure the experience is good.
No, absolutely. And I think, fair to say that what technology will provide is data, right? And data is only good as the actionable insights and the actions that you can take from it, right? And so I think being able to really target and say, yeah, these 80% are doing really well. These 20% are, and here's the areas for a manager to go focus at. I mean, I've run restaurants. It's been a while. You know, we've all been in there, and your day never starts as it plans, and you have so much to happen that, you know, nowadays through data and technology, having that instant alert to say, go check this, as opposed to trying to like hunt and peck through a whole bunch of different things to try and figure out like where my problems are, I think is the most impactful thing. How when you look at it, you know, I think, you know, it's probably at some point every restaurant is going to have to deal with some sort of food safety issue, right? Maybe not to an extreme, but, you know, something happens. How can tech help prevent some of those situations?
Look, so some of the tech that we're doing is we're connected to the tablet, to the checklist through a digital probe. And so there's no mistaking of, you know, if I took a temperature reading and it says it's 130 degrees and I write down 103 degrees by mistake. So it takes that temperature immediately from whatever food product you're doing it in, you're probing at that time. There are just a variety of other things that tech help with, and it's just stop them from pencil whipping. You just brought up something really interesting, Kelly, is the day never ends like you thought it was gonna, you know, at the start of the day. Priorities come up, a customer complaint comes in, and one thing leads to another, and all of a sudden you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. So yeah, just the basic alerting is great, but the other part of it too is beyond people doing it the right way, there's also something known as pencil whipping, right? Mm-hmm. I don't have time for that, so let me fake that I just did all that. And it happens all the time. And so some of the things that Bob had mentioned too is, yeah, barcode to prove that you were there. So it comes the prove it technology. Take a picture of the bathroom after you've cleaned it. Take a picture of the stock that was put away. And so those are all the sort of things that tech can do. And because it's, you know, online and it's cloud, it's alerting, it's, you know, providing dashboards, it's providing reports that show complete and incomplete tasks. And so the fail safe is people watching those dashboards and making the calls, sending that email and saying, hey, what's going on? Or even deeper, maybe some of those checklists are tied to bonuses from a restaurant manager. And anyways, I think that's one way tech can help.
And this is kind of more of an emotional thing, right? But it's really peace of mind at the end of the day. So when that owner goes home and they know that the temp of the dishwasher was correct, the food was prepped at the right time, you know, the labels are put on correctly, the Board of Health's been updated, so my temp logs, all that stuff's in place. Surprise audit from corporate or from Board of Health or whatever, you know you're going to pass with flying colors. You get to enjoy your time away. Yeah. And right, I mean, it's so hard to walk away from your business, but to be able to walk away and know that you're not going to be surprised is a beautiful thing, I think.
Yeah, I think there's no surprises, right? And if you can put in kind of the routines and the systems in place, so it's not, you know, when the inspector comes, I think we all get a little bit nervous just because it's the inspector. But if you're doing what you're supposed to be doing consistently every day and you're measuring and managing it, then when the inspector comes in, or, you know, the audit, you know, somebody that's coming in to audit brand standards, it shouldn't be a big heavy lift because you're managing to that every single day, right? As opposed to, you know, trying to get it all done the day before because you heard that maybe a surprise audit is coming through, you know, a friend of a friend, right? And so you see that happen all the time. And so I think, you know, way back when we, you know, I was running restaurants and, you know, I remember line check with a spoon and tasting every dressing. And that was kind of how you know, if it tasted a little sour, then you threw away the jar. And this is, I mean, you know, I think we're all in the kind of 30-year club here. You know, and it's come a long way. Where do you see the advancements coming? Because I would think that, you know, we've gone from kind of paper to digital to cloud to really being able to drive insights and analytics. Do you see capabilities like machine learning and kind of AI starting to look at, you know, you don't want to make it so that nobody looks at anything, right? And so that, you know, the computers are taking, you know, the systems are taking care of all that you want somebody to still have like insights and looking at it, but taking away some of the heavy lifting. And so, you know, capabilities like if I'm taking a picture, machine learning is like matching up and the pitcher and saying, this is not in brand standard, or this is where you need to go fix, as opposed to a human doing that. And maybe you do that today, or maybe you see some of those advancements coming. So would love to see how you see, where we're at today and where you see kind of, this area of the restaurant evolving over time.
Yeah, I think one of the areas that the new norm is going to have, that's being forced through COVID, is really alignment of different systems into one roll up or dashboard type thing, for analytics. And, I really think, and Jeff and I are working pretty hard on this, the integration of strong APIs between the POS data, systems like ours, rolling that up into a dashboard that's exception based and utilizes AI to quickly identify trends, within the hour, if not sooner, is going to be something that we'll see. And then the second trend, I think, really, just from the food safety standpoint, the farm to table tracking, and integrating that into the product once it gets into inventory, is going to be something that we'll see as kind of a next step. And, I think one of the things that kind of happened was a lot of these technologies were 5 years out, and now they're today.
Yep.
So a lot of that just has moved forward a lot quicker. And I think that's where, from a tech stack standpoint, it becomes really important to make sure you have the right infrastructure in place to take care of those type of API calls.
Yeah, no, and I would say coming out of COVID, probably the people that are struggling the most are the legacy technology providers, right? Because of omni-channel and kind of all this new norm and these new, ways of doing business, you have to have that flexibility, right? You have to be able to connect. And again, it really becomes, and kind of the message of, the overall, ebook we're putting together is really truly talking about this connected restaurant. And how do we make it seamless? So, you take a best of breed approach, which is going to happen because there's so many people that do great things in each kind of respective area of the business. And how do you make that seamless from an owner to make sure that data is flowing and it doesn't become this really heavy lift to integrations used to be a very scary thing because it was so difficult. And now, everything has to be a little bit more, not to simplify it, but plug and play, right?
It's fascinating. Are you familiar with Retail Technology Network, RTN?
Yeah, I am.
Yeah, right. So one of the results of this is collaboration. So RTN has set up multiple working groups that we're involved with other companies and even competitors. And we're all working together to create standards similar to what HTNG did for the hotels, so that going forward, we'll have brand standards. We'll have standards for API calls, et cetera, so that we can move quicker. And, it's a pretty interesting thing that's kind of come out of this.
Yeah, which is amazing, right? And so, so going back to kind of basics that we were talking about, the hardest part about what we do is about influencing change in a restaurant, right? And changing behaviors. And anytime you do a new system, it's generally not the tech that's the hard part. And, I'm not disrespect to any tech people. And, I've said this to my team before is, change is where most projects fail. And so what would what are some best practices that you give to restaurants out there looking to implement a technology such as this? And then what are some of the common mistakes you've seen, just so we can give some advice to, hopefully kind of ward off some pain if somebody's out in the market looking to deploy these types of technologies?
So we've been working on our proof of concept internally to Jolt, and it sort of speaks volumes to your question in a lot of ways. Are the right resources dedicated on both sides of the equation, on the vendor and the customer side? Have you thought about what does great look like? And try to define that success criteria and the goals. And then I think another best practice is don't bite off more than anybody can chew. And so in the case of Jolt, we've got 5-6 different modules available. Do you adopt them all at once, or as part of your project plan, more of a slow adoption, right? Try, fail. I think Kelly, with your background working with large organizations, there's a new term out there, fast fail, right? Try it. It doesn't work, move on, get to the next module. What works for the brand? Anyways, those are just some of mine, some of my thoughts as we're approaching our proof of concept program development is how do you do it right and prepare yourself for success.
Yeah, I always like my motto was always design with the end in mind, but then you got to build backwards how to get there, right? And I think if you try and do it all at once, then you get, you get nowhere fast. And I think you brought up a great point as well, of just, keep it simple, right? And I think, and Bob would love you to kind of weigh in on this, but what I've seen where some of the challenges of the past is people want to take their process today and force to fit it into a technology. And if you're going to implement a new system, take the time to rethink your business process, right? Take the time, and especially now, since we don't have a playbook, like make it simple, like make it effective, but make it simple and not try and just recreate a paper process into tech. And I think you spend a lot of time, people then want to customize things and kind of do things the very difficult way. Lean on the experts to help you guide what the right process should be, based on my experience. And again, fail forward, and don't be afraid to kind of like change courses, right?
Yeah, I think one of the benefits we all have on this call is our experience over years of failing.
Yeah, I got a couple of war wounds. I remember doing an interview once and somebody asked me about failing, and I go or how often do you make mistakes? I'm like, oh, probably every hour.
Yeah.
If you're not making mistakes, you're not kind of pushing yourself further, and you can't be afraid of them, right? You got to learn from them. Don't make the same mistake twice, but learn from them and kind of move on. But sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say one of the war wounds from being in the POS industry is replacing a competitive product, but yet try to still do what the competitive product did, right? There's a reason why someone would buy a replacement, and it's because of the what the capabilities are. And when you try to go back to what someone else was doing prior to, all you're really doing is handicapping yourself and the customers. So I've certainly learned over the years to walk away from business if we don't have a strong alignment between the customer's expectation and our expectation. Certainly one of the lessons in life is that then it's not worth, if you don't have a win-win environment, it's not worth doing the job because you're just going to pay for it long term. So.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
People change management. Everybody thinks of change management in terms of tech, but people change management is just as important.
Exactly.
Yep. No, I agree 100%. Well, gentlemen, I really appreciate the conversation. If somebody's interested in exploring more about Jolt, what's the best way for them to engage with you?
It's www.jolt.com. And I'm sorry I said the www. I just showed my age. Jolt.com.
That's awesome. Well, I really appreciate it. I appreciate your time today. A fascinating conversation. It's great to catch up. And I hopefully together we can all, make the lives of all the, restaurant owners out there a little bit easier and during these, very challenging times. So thank you very much.
Kelly, thank you. Appreciate the time today.
Thanks.
Awesome.